topic. So welcome to the talk on healing broken relationships. So in this session here, what we're going to try to do is to convert some of the broken relationships to just relationships without being broken. So first of all is for us to realize that the key to happiness is not just our wealth, accumulating more and more wealth, or just our health, because eventually our health is going to deteriorate. It's a matter of time, not if, but when. So what is the real key? The real key to happiness as we journey life through the thick and thin, to the highs and lows. It is really about our relationships. When we have good relationships at home, we look forward to going home. We're happy to be home. But when we don't have great relationships at home, we just want to get out. We want to be somewhere else but the home. And the home becomes like a prison. When we're there, we feel that it feels suffocating, or like as though we are being restricted. And we can't just be ourselves and be relaxed. So when we use the expression, we just can't be myself, it just means that I'm tense. I'm feeling like I can't really express myself. I have to be tiptoeing. I have to be so watchful of what I do and what I say, as things could be taken the wrong way. And it almost feels like an imprisonment. But when we have good relationships, home doesn't feel that way. It feels like this is where I belong. This is where I feel relaxed and comfortable. This is the same with being in the office. For those of us who work, going to the office and we feel we belong, we feel cared for, we feel relaxed, that we can speak without being so careful with our words, then we actually look forward to going to work. So I hope that this makes sense to you, that relationships really make a big difference to our experience in life. Because we can't be working somewhere and just waiting for our paycheck at the end of the month. And in between the two paychecks is an unpleasant experience every day, because our relationships are not in great shape and some are broken. Now, some of you may have suffered a broken heart, whether because you lost someone very dear to you, or the relationship has somehow fallen apart, whether it's with a former partner or with a spouse. And there's something what it's called broken heart syndrome. Some people are suffering from broken heart, and it actually feels like it's in the chest, and that's why we call it a broken heart syndrome, as it feels like the heart has split into two, or it's been shredded. And some broken heart syndrome is misdiagnosed as a heart attack. This doctor, in fact, shared that with a broken heart syndrome, the surge of stress-related hormones can cause sudden intense chest pain. As a result, it can feel as if your heart is actually breaking. So what you experience is not unreal. The physical changes that goes on in the body is real, and it actually happens around the chest area, which is why you experience it like your heart is breaking. I'm sure some of you have experienced that, yes? Okay. So how does mindfulness play a role in this? So John Kabat-Zinn, who founded secular mindfulness, defines this as paying attention in a particular way on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So these words are also be put together. On purpose means it's not like you're being distracted or your attention is just being called for without your sense of presence. It is on purpose and in a particular way. And this particular way actually means that it's supported by the mindfulness foundational attitudes, which I will share with you what they are. And mindful means being in the present moment in a non-judgmental way. This doesn't mean that our mind doesn't judge. In fact, some of us are rewarded well at work because of our good judgment. But in the present moment, especially in a relationship, if we are judging someone in a negative way, then chances are we are rather defensive or even aggressive. And this results in the experience that we have in a relationship due to our judgment. So the doctor that mentioned that there's this rush of stress hormones that causes the constriction in the chest area, makes it feel like it's as though we're having a heart problem. It's real, and it doesn't just affect the heart. It can affect our head, and that's why we experience headaches, or we experience the inability to actually sleep because our mind won't shut down, or we experience gut problems because our digestive system is not working properly due to the stress hormones that has tightened our digestive system area. Or we may suffer a lot of pain in the body because these hormones, which is adrenaline and cortisol, has the effect of tensing our muscles, getting us ready to fight or flight. So that's why when we don't have good relationships at home or at work, we feel like getting out of the home or resigning, not wanting to go into work. Or we become aggressive because we feel that if we can't leave, then we're going to fight. We're going to defend ourselves. So in this program, it helps us to realize what the stress triggers are and how to manage these stress triggers in order to lower the level of stress that we're experiencing. We're never going to get rid of stress completely as long as we're alive. Is how we manage it in order for it to be at a level that even enhances our performance and to give us a better experience in life. So what are these foundational attitudes? So there are usually 9, but today I'm just going to focus on 7. Kindness is one of them that we teach as part of our Mindfulness Foundation course. Non-judging, acceptance, letting go, gratitude, generosity, and patience. And I'd like to discuss how we can heal relationships by applying these foundational attitudes, as in the way it's defined, paying attention in a particular way. And that particular way is about having a mind that is kinder, non-judging, more accepting, letting go, having more gratitude, practicing generosity and patience. So let me ask you, when your relationship was breaking up or when it broke, was your mind being mindful, as in the right, or the mind is simply full? That you had a lot of worries going on in your mind, whether it's financial worries, your job security, the ability to afford the things that you want, or expectations are just not met. So while we have a lot of stuff in our mind, that is not the kind of mindful state that we want to be. That is usually a state that causes us to be easily irritated or aggravated or agitated. That is more of a mindless state, when we often say things that we wish we didn't say, and feeling regretful. There is a cost to being mindless. When we lose our mind, it's because the mind is so full. It's not because we're practicing mindfulness. If we practice mindfulness, we are less likely to be mindless, and we're less likely to lose our mind. Because losing our mind is when emotions engulf us and we get swept away with thoughts that are usually hurtful, harmful, and even very damaging. So when you're seated across the table, are you focused on the person across from you? Or are you busy looking at your mobile device, checking on who else is communicating with you in the present moment, but it's not in front of you, but always seems to be more important than the one in front of us? Are we thinking about work? Or are we thinking about what we want to do later on or tomorrow? Anything but being attentive to the person across from us. If this is the case very often, what do you think is going to happen to the relationship? Is the relationship likely to blossom or likely to degenerate? So sometimes when I'm in a concert hall or watching a play in a theater, and while we're waiting for the show to start, I kind of look around me in the theater. And many of them are couples, but they're not actually talking to each other. Many of them seem to be texting someone else. So they may be sitting with their date, but they're not engaging their date. And people who are eating with each other are also not paying attention to each other. They are texting somebody else. Would you do that if the person in front of you is important? Would you do that if you were courting someone at the start of a relationship? You probably won't get very far with your dating endeavor. And imagine that if you were talking to a client and this client is important, and you start texting someone else instead of paying attention to this client that you're trying to close some business with, do you think that client will be giving you the contract? No, right? Because you can't be building a good relationship if you're not attentive to the person. And that is a big cost to our relationships that we take for granted. We may not be aware of the cost of doing it. But when we finally figure out the price, it may be a bit late. Maybe never too late, but a bit late. So I'm going to use this analogy. You have a glass and you have a plastic cup. Which item would you treat with more care? Yes, the one on the left, the glass, because you know that if you don't treat it with care, it's likely to break. And if you drop the glass, it would shatter. But when you're dealing with a plastic cup, you treat it with less care. You can even toss it into the sink after you have used it, or toss it into the bin, because it's not going to break. And because it's low value. So in terms of your relationships, how do you treat the relationship? Is it like the glass or is it like the plastic cup? If we don't consider that the relationship has a lot of value, then we would treat it like a plastic cup. We use it and then we just discard it. Or we use it and then we just not really put a lot of care into it. But in a relationship that we value and we want to preserve it, we would treat it like a glass. Sadly, for many relationships between parent and child or siblings because we are blood related that we may not put as much care into the relationship because we regard it as a plastic cup. And when spouses treat their marriage like a plastic cup, that's why the relationship degenerates, because it is not plastic in nature. Just because two people get married and sign a document doesn't guarantee that the relationship will last if it's not treated with care. So, what are the tips of healthy relationships that are also sustainable? That we need to communicate kindly to each other. I'm not talking about tiptoeing with our words, but the words that we use are kind in nature instead of harsh, instead of being nonchalant. It's like we're not even going to choose a word that is encouraging, that is nourishing. Another thing we need to do is to make time to do activities together. In a new relationship, a lot of times, we make time to do things together. And when we start to take people for granted, then we actually do not make time. To express and show gratitude with generosity. It's like put your money where your mouth is. Buying gifts, giving treats. These are very explicit gestures of gratitude. Write a little card. Get someone a drink instead of counting. We're not generous when we say, last time I got you a drink. Now you get me a drink. That's not being generous. When we're generous, it's like, it's okay. I'm going to get a drink. I'm going to get you a drink as well. That is an act of generosity as well. Be helpful towards each other. A relationship blossoms and it's sustainable when we actually add value to each other's life. And if there's unhappiness, because there will always be some differences, some disconnects, some misexpectations, is to express it in a calm tone instead of a tone that's going to aggravate the other person. To be able to say, I don't feel very happy about this. Or what you've just said to me really hurts me. Say in a calm tone instead of, I'm not happy. Or you really hurt me. Or you just make me so angry. That is not calm. And that is very accusing. So instead is to express what is the unhappiness here? Like, it really hurts. Or I'm feeling unhappy without accusing the other person. Now, bear in mind, if you're going to be healing relationships, it's also important for us to practice acceptance, letting go, and gratitude. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some people aren't meant to stay in your life. Some people are just passing through to bring you something, perhaps a lesson you need to learn, or memory that makes you smile years later. When the time comes, it's okay to let go and move on with your life. So when we apply gratitude to someone who no longer wants to be with us, it's not to see it as broken, but to see it as, thank you for your time with me. Thank you for helping me grow. Thank you for the lessons I'm learning about relationships and about myself, where I need to fine tune, where I need to polish like a gemstone that needs polishing. And when we are able to take the lessons, then we're able to be better in the next relationship. So instead of being bitter, is to be better. Because when we're bitter, that bitterness that we take into the next relationship is almost certain that it's going to poison that relationship. But if we become better, we're able to let go of all the anger, that resentment, that blame, and move into another relationship with a much fresher perspective, with more maturity and wisdom. And that's how we grow. Some of you may have split up from your spouse. And I have a saying, if you can't be a good wife, be a good ex-wife. Or if you're a man, if you can't be a good husband, be a good ex-husband. And why is it important? Because life is short. Life is really short. Do we want to be feeling bad about ourselves, feeling not proud of ourselves, if we continue to be resentful and to be even unkind? Because we need to live with ourselves. And by being a kind ex-spouse, it helps us to like ourselves better, because this is the one relationship we cannot afford to break, the relationship with oneself. So when we're actually being kind and forgiving, we actually build a much better relationship with the self. And when we have that sense of pride in being a good person and the kindness in our heart, we bring a lot of joy to the people who are still around us. And if you are a mother or a father and you have children, this is role modeling. To be able to teach your children that it's okay when things go wrong, because there's still many things that you can make it right. So even though you may not be living with your spouse anymore, but if you are kind and still generous to your ex-spouse, you will add a lot of happiness to your children's lives, and they still matter. In fact, what we do affects how they experience their growing up years and how it will affect their adulthood. So I have seen many cases where children have parents who are very cantankerous towards each other, could even be very mean towards each other. And this emotionally affects them so much that they grow up damaged. And if we love our children, we don't want to damage them. So there may be a broken marriage, but it doesn't have to be a broken relationship. There is a difference. It's like you may break a contract with someone, but you don't have to not have a good relationship going forward. It's only that the partnership didn't work, but you're still two good people who can still have a good relationship. And how do we do that? By practicing being kind. So this is where the foundational attitudes kick in. By being non-judging. So instead of holding the negative judgment about the other person, is to put it aside, because those judgments have come from experiences, probably an unpleasant experience. But remember, there have been so many pleasant experiences in your life with this person. Just that recently you've had some negative experiences, and that should not cast the color over the entire relationship that you've had over years. Except that things have changed and you may be moving on, or things have changed and you need to adapt and to let go of the expectations that could not be fulfilled. By letting go, it also helps for us to remember to be grateful for all the things that we were blessed with because of the relationship. And if this is a marital relationship, to be grateful for the children that you had together. To be grateful for the good times you've had together, accepting that the times have changed, the relationship is transforming. And if it's with your parents, to remember all the kind and generous things your parents have done for you. And if it's a sibling, the times that you had together growing up, all the wonderful things that you shared. That is the practice of gratitude. And putting the judgment aside due to the recent events that may have happened. Except that, we are at times mindless. And in those mindless moments, we actually say things that are less than kind or even hurtful. And to be able to forgive is what helps us to move on, to be a better person and not a bitter person. Generosity always helps as a balm to heal. Show acts of generosity, gifts that will matter to that person, even if it's just buying a bar of chocolate or buy a takeaway from the shop when you know that this is a favorite dish of the person, is to then send it over. And now you don't even have to do it yourself. You can just order online and send the person a gift. Isn't that nice? To be able to be generous with someone who may not think so well of you. Because when you give something to someone, the judgment of that person will change. No doubt initially that person may be cynical or skeptical, and it's okay. It's okay, because over time, when you do it consistently, it will be considered sincere. If you just do it 1 or 2 times with a certain motive, then that person has every reason to wonder what your motive is. But if your intention is one that is sincere and authentic, over time, the person will realize that you have a good heart. And I really believe that we all have a good heart. And our good heart is often tarnished by our fears and our anger. So develop patience. It doesn't mean that just because we're going to do an act of kindness or act of generosity or show our gratitude, that's going to suddenly flip things around. It's not. So consistency and persistence is going to help heal broken relationships. So I just want to share a cartoon. I thought this is very cute. And the doctor said, the diagnosis is, you tested positive for being too negative. So when we are negative minded, things around us will tend to look negative. And we would tend to have a suspicious mind, a mind that's also cynical and skeptical. And it's not helpful in relationships. So when I realized this, I started to transform my mind to be positive. So what is the best blood type? B positive. That's just a joke. So by being positive, we can see the goodness in people instead of just seeing their bad. We all have good and bad, I'm sure. In a day, there might be moments that, we're not just as positive, and it's okay. So what is necessary is to practice being positive more often, and then we get into a habit of being more positive. Now you may say, yeah, that's easier said than done. That's true. It's easier said than done. That's why it takes practice that comes with awareness. And that's the reason I'm so passionate teaching mindfulness, because it has helped me to transform my mind. I'm very nice to my ex-husband, and it wasn't by chance. It's really through practice. So to change our relationships, we have to change our perspectives, especially the one that we have a broken relationship with, to start seeing the good in that person again, and to focus our mind on their good. Because for you to have had a good relationship with the person, especially for a long time, there must have been a lot of good. And that's what you had been focusing on in the past. And we are not faultless in how we may have brought some of the worst out of the person by being that person's stress trigger. So when we are non-judging, we are able to see how we contributed to the relationship degenerating. And that is what would be a great lesson for us in becoming wiser and more mature. What does being more mature means? Being less emotional. That's what it really means. So when we're less emotional, we can see things more clearly instead of through colored lens. And it's about changing our thought pattern. So if we tend to think negatively, it's because we have developed a thought pattern that is negative in nature. And it's called a thinking habit. You know, it's like when you play the piano and you keep making the same mistakes at a certain part of your music notes, then it has become a habit. And for you to correct that, it requires you to be more aware and keep practicing that part over and over again until you change the pattern of the play. Same with our thoughts. When we are aware, we change the pattern in how we think, and that's how we transform the way we perceive things and the way we react. And we call this a response instead of just reacting. And this is what I teach as part of the Mindfulness-Based Cognitive Therapy course, which is curated by Oxford University. And these three wise men met up with Jon Kabat-Zinn to discuss how mindfulness can be married with cognitive behavioral therapy, because our thoughts drive our behavior. So if we want to change our behavior, we have to be aware of our thoughts and consciously shift. So that is also why it's an 8-week program. And I love this course because it really helps people to be aware of the thoughts that are actually causing them to feel unhappy with life, to be upset and unable to let go of their grief or their regrets. So it's also an inoculation against depression. It's a bit like Pfizer and Moderna against COVID. So this one is against depression. So I'm coming to the end of my talk. I hope it has been useful. And what we keep doing at Brahm Centre is to bring programs that will help you to transform your mind. Workshops and retreats that will help build your awareness in order to enhance your wellness and resilience. So these are all on the website. You can have a look at them when you download, and we have so many programs that you can take advantage of. And I really look forward to seeing some of you if you have never attended my course. So now I'm going to open to questions.